Jimmy V was the head coach at NC State for years and died of cancer in the 90s. Had the now infamous speech at the ESPYs, with which he ended, don't give up, don't ever give up. All right, another day, another dollar. As my man used to say back in Pulaski Furniture when I worked there years ago. When did you get a raise? So leaving the stove, got to do a couple of things. So I'd take you along for the ride, for a little bit of it anyway, because you don't want me talking for no hour-long ride. And talk to you about how not to give up. Jimmy V was the head coach at NC State for years and died of cancer in the 90s. Had the now infamous speech at the ESPYs, with which he ended, don't give up, don't ever give up. And that's the slogan that they go with now as they try to raise money for that cancer research and that foundation. And so then the question becomes how, because a lot of people say don't ever give up, keep going. Well, how do you keep from giving up? Well, I'm going to give you some scripture. Some of you will relate to that, some of you won't, but still the principles apply, whether you use it from a spiritual sense, a godly sense, or just an everyday sense. How do you keep from giving up? I'll be back in a second. I got to take this collar back to PetSmart because we neutered the cat. PetSmart is not the place for me. A little bit irritating. There's some in there with more love for the dog and the cat than more sense. I know. A lot of you will really love the animals, the canines and the felines. But man, oh man, it's a little too far with some of that. I didn't pick up my dog water purifier today because my dog is still, well, the dogs that used to be in the house were still licking places that were not purified first. Anyway, that's disgusting. So in the same vein, I didn't get any entertainment because we didn't get to put the cat in the cone of shame. That's all I know to call it from the movie Up. But we didn't get to put the cat in the cone of shame after having it neutered, and it needed to go in there because the cat started marking his territory. And so I told the little lady it's time for me to mark my territory, and we had him neutered. It's a rat race, isn't it? Finished work, jump back in the car, got the usual shirt and tie on, going to make the drive, gotta go get gas, got stuff to do when I get home. So do you, so do we all. How do you keep from stopping? How do you keep from quitting? Because it happens to a lot of people. Gotta learn how to turn this thing on. It happens to a lot of people. So like I was saying about the rat race, you get caught in the middle of it, you lose your way. You have aspects like midlife crisis. You have tragic things that happen to you, which I haven't had a lot of that. And then sometimes you just get run down by the everyday grind. How do you keep from quitting, from giving up? It happens to some people, and it's sad when it does happen. Sometimes voluntary, sometimes involuntary. Involuntarily. Forgot a syllable. Syllables. All right, here we go. Got the gasoline. Now the lesson, the point. How to not quit. How to not give up. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 16. See, this is what happens when you drive through a parking lot like a fool. Slow down. You hit a kid or something and it's going to be bad times. I want to circle around, but I'm not going to. As I was saying, in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 16, Paul says, so we do not lose heart. That is the idea. That's the concept. We do not give up. We do not quit. Now, the other part of that is we bend, but we don't break. Now, he says earlier on in that passage, and I won't give you the exact verses, you go look it up. Again, 2 Corinthians chapter 4 He said, we are afflicted in every way. We are hurt in every way, but yet not crushed. Bent, but not broken. He says also, we are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Bent, but not broken. He says also, we are persecuted, but not forsaken. We are struck down, but not destroyed. Bent, but not broken. Look, life is hard. Let's just get it out there and get out of the way. It's not a negative statement. It's realistic. There is a balance in there somewhere. But life is difficult. And if you choose this way to live, the Christian way to live, man, it's hard. In the English Standard, and by the way, what I quote, and sometimes I paraphrase and give you the exact version, because I have a lot of different versions I use, but a lot of the times, most of the times, I'm using the English Standard Version. Side note here, if you are the King James only people, let's have a conversation and discussion, because that version, contrary to popular belief, did not fall down from heaven in 1611. It was not, as one person said, good enough for Paul, so good enough for me. It came about 1,500 years after Paul, by the way, and there are other reliable versions such as the ESV. All right, rant over. What was I saying? I hit the record button and don't remember what else. Oh, yeah. Bent but not broken. That's the idea, because this way of life is hard. So, as I was talking about the ESV, when you go back to Matthew chapter 7, sunlight, my bad. Give me a moment. When you go back to Matthew chapter 7 and verse 14, it talks about the way, that narrow way. And it says there, it is hard. In the King James, it says, I believe, straight. Well, that means it's difficult. Jesus said that if I suffer, you suffer, because the servant is not greater than his master, in John 13 and John 15. So we've established that you can expect this way to be difficult. So Paul is perplexed but not driven to despair. He is afflicted but not crushed. He is actually literally struck down. He was, and yet not destroyed. And he says in verse 16, so we do not lose heart, for a lot of reasons. So we don't quit, we don't give up. Aren't you tired sometimes of the generic cliche statements like don't give up, it's all worth it? Well, tell me how to not give up, because sometimes that just feels empty. And I'm not talking about me personally, I'm just talking about in general. Sometimes that feels empty. Well, this passage actually tells you that. And even if you want to take it from a secular standpoint, I would hope not, for a lot of different reasons. But even if you want to go from a secular standpoint, he says, though the outer body is wasting away, essentially, the inner self is being renewed. So no matter what happens out here, no matter how much I wear down, and I am, as we grow older, we're blessed enough to grow older, you start to wear down, but the inner self is growing and blossoming, because I can't think of a better word. So the strength to do so, to not give up, first of all, comes from the power of God. All right, but aside from that, taking that into keeping that in perspective, aside from that, as far as what I can do is I can renew my mind. In fact, this transformation that happens in Romans chapter 12 says it begins by the renewal of the mind. So I grow here, even though I may be dying here, falling apart here, my mind is growing and I'm getting stronger. And that's where this fight begins, is inside. Spirit, mind, all that. Just a minute, because I'm sitting at a red light, so let me get this out quickly. The rest of this recipe is in verses 17 and 18, 2 Corinthians chapter 6. If this comes off as preachy, it's my fault. I've got to get this done in a little bit of time. I'm already late on the release this week, and I just want to get this information out there. So I'll spend a little more time in the next video But you're gonna have to come back and check out part 2. I don't know how we'd do that. I told Clayton some of these things could stretch out to like Friday the 13th movies. Part 8 on how not to give up. And by that time, man, you're lost. But at least there'll be a second half. So come back, see the second half in verses 17 and 18. And what you can do is read forward and see if you can figure it out for yourself. And I'll try to expound on those passages. How not to give up and to keep going. And some real world stuff you can use. I hope this helps you. I hope it gets you interested. Share this with other people. Get involved. Comment, add to, take away, whatever it is. But let this be a growing and learning experience for all of us as we try to strive and achieve greatness. And I'm doing this through the Lord. So that's where my greatness comes from and where I strive to be. All right. I hope y'all have a good day. I'm out.